We are glad to have in studio this morning U.S. Senator James Lankford. He is back home. You were here for the weekend, and then you head back out tomorrow, right?
That's right.
Well, when you go back, I mean, it's the hot topic everyone's talking about, the impeachment inquiry taking place of President Donald Trump. At this point, where is all of this headed, do you think?
So they've had several months now of closed door, behind the scenes hearings, and that's been the frustration, is no one really knows what the accusation is. Initially, this was about Ukraine and about a phone call with the president of Ukraine. We have that text, so that transcript is out, that's public. The president released that immediately. All the hearings behind the scenes, we really don't know what it is, because it seems to be an argument about, was there a phone call, what was in the phone call, but we have the text of the phone call, and so we're not sure what that is. They have said that they're going to finish up these private hearings, and then they're going to move it to a public phase, and we'll know a lot more at this point. I've not met Oklahomans that have changed their mind in this. If people were supportive of President Trump, they still are. People opposed him, they still are. There's not been a lot of new information that's come out, so we'll wait and see what they do in the public hearings. Clearly, they just voted last week to be able to move it to a more formal process and head towards impeachment. If they do that, that could be in the next few weeks to the next couple of months. I would expect before Christmas at the latest.
Several months ago, you were actually in Ukraine.
I was.
What were some of your observations there about what's happening now?
So what's so interesting is that Americans don't know, and because we just don't follow the news in Ukraine all the time, but there was a presidential election this past spring in Ukraine, and a new president was elected. He was actually a television sitcom actor that was there. When he was elected, no one knew who he was. And so I've been engaged in Ukraine. Ukraine policy is very important to us because of Russia, because they border on Russia. Russia currently occupies about 1/3 of their country. So when I was there meeting with a lot of their government officials and some of the new transitional people into the new presidency, all the local media that would show up at the different events, all they wanted to talk about was Rudy Giuliani and Hunter Biden. That was the main conversation for all the local media.
That was back in the spring?
That was back in May.
Wow.
We weren't talking about that at all here at this point, but that's all the Ukrainian folks were talking about at that time.
So if the House votes yes to impeach, will the Senate say no? Is that what you're thinking is?
What happens immediately is when the House votes to impeach the president, which I think they will. There were 100 people at the beginning of this year that were in the House that wanted to impeach the president over Russia, and then the Russia investigation finished and there was no there, and then now there's 200 plus that want to impeach him over Ukraine. So I think they will move to impeach. I think they've been very, very focused on it for a while. Once they impeach him in the House, it'll come to a trial in the Senate the very next day. We'll go to 6 days a week in a trial setting. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will come and actually preside over that trial. The House will send over someone to actually plead their case to say this is why we think the president needs to be removed. The president will send over his attorney, and there'll be a full-on trial, and members of the Senate are a jury. The Bill Clinton impeachment trial was 5 weeks long. I would expect this one to probably be around 4 or 5, somewhere through there as well, as both sides make their case and the Senate makes the decision on it. So I can't predict what that decision will be because we don't know what any evidence is, but if it's what we have now, that there's a phone call, everyone has the phone call. The phone call may be unwise, but it doesn't look illegal.
All right. I know that another topic that we're talking about, the Senate Finance Committee working to regulate prescription drug prices and the high costs. Where is that heading?
It's a really big issue. We started on in January, having hearings with pharmaceutical companies, with groups behind the scenes called the pharmacy benefit managers, different folks. We're trying to be able to get, how do we get to pricing issues with pharmaceuticals? There's not one issue, there are 100 small issues, and they all rack up together to be able to deal with the pricing that we have.
It's a big problem in Oklahoma.
It is a big problem. Insulin, asthma medications, all kinds of issues. Now, not every drug has gone up in price. But those specialty drugs especially have skyrocketed, and insulin, which is not a new drug, has been a major problem. So there's several things that I'm working on. I'm working on an issue called tiering. There'll be a new generic drug that'll be presented. The behind-the-scenes group that does the pharmacy pricing will say, well, the new generic drug needs to be on the branded tier. Almost everyone has had this, where they walk in the pharmacy and they say, I got this prescription, is there a generic?
Right.
And the pharmacist says, yes, there is, but it's the same price. Well, the reason is because the pharmacy benefit managers and the drug companies have colluded together to be able to put the generic drug on the higher price tier, and it drives out generic competition, and it forces all of us to pay more for drugs.
Well, it really holds patients hostage almost.
Correct.
Do you want to get better, or or not, because you have to pay this big price.
Right.
So it'll be
I also know your Federal Fumbles coming out around Thanksgiving, so we will be looking forward to, I think, looking forward to that report coming out.
We're always trying to bring new information out and say, here are the things that should happen better, where we're lacking in efficiency, and we try to bring solutions to every single one of those.
Well, Senator Lankford, thanks so much for coming in early and talking with Oklahomans this morning.
You've been glad to be able to visit with both of you.
Thank you.